Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and Corey.
Hello, everybody.
Well, we have a fabulous show in store for you this evening, listeners, and as you know, Unlocking Your Truth is a show all about metaphysics and spirituality. And we love just exploring that realm of consciousness, and tonight is no exception.
And do we ever have a special guest on tonight? Just blow your socks off.
Yeah, we have a fabulous guest on tonight, and I'm going to introduce that guest momentarily. Now, as you're listening to the show, if you have a question for our guest, then you can email it to info@drlesleyphillips.com, or you can call 604-504-7441, extension 4142. So like I said, today is going to be no exception. We're going to have a fantastic exploration of the interface between science and spirituality. And that's a subject obviously after my own heart. Now, our guest this evening, his name is Mark Antony, and he is known as the psychic lawyer.
I've been waiting for this interview. It's gonna be fun.
And he's the author of a couple of award-winning bestsellers. One's called Never Letting Go, and the other is called Evidence of Eternity. And he's also a world-renowned psychic medium, and he communicates with spirit, and he actually comes from a family of mediums as well. In addition to that, he's an Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida and Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. He features regularly on the television and on talk radio shows such as this and in the print media. He speaks at conventions and expos and at organizations like the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment and the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and other universities like Brown, Columbia, Harvard, and Yale. And so he loves talking about helping connect you with spirit, and also has a passion for helping people not to be afraid or superstitious about spirit and the afterlife. And also just helping people understand that side of things when it comes to crimes and homicide and suicide. Now today, I think we're going more into the theme of his book, which is Evidence of Eternity, because like I said, we're headed for a discussion on science and spirituality. So without further ado, I'm going to say welcome to Mark Antony. Hello, Mark. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. I apologize.
No worries. Thank you for having me on the show. I've really been looking forward to this.
Yeah, did you hear the introduction, by the way?
I did. That was very nice of you. Thank you. I was listening to this going, now, who are they talking about?
Was it all truthful, I hope? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, so you're known as the psychic lawyer. So that's pretty interesting. And how is that perceived? Does the one support the other, or does the one oppose the other? How do people generally think about that?
That's a good question, because people tend to think one would oppose the other and that they're somehow diametrically opposed. Because, people tend to revert to stereotypes. And when they hear that you're a lawyer, they think that you're a vampiric, blood-sucking entity that just wants to prey upon. And see, everyone's laughing because that's the stereotype of lawyers. It's all about kill, crush, destroy with no heart and soul. And that when they hear that you're a psychic medium, they think that you're sliding down a rainbow on your unicorn into the Republic of Kumbaya.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, a lot of attorneys, the ones that are my friends anyway, they're good people who are very conscientious and work very hard to help their clients. And I've been living in the real world for a long time because a lot of psychics think, we do live in this kumbaya world, and if we change our vibration, ISIS will stop beheading people, and it's like, but the reality is that both of my professions are about helping people. Both of my professions are about evidence, because an attorney needs evidence to substantiate his or her case, and a psychic medium has to bring forth evidence to prove that who I'm communicating with is to validate that. So I've never found the two opposed at all. I see that they work in tandem, and it certainly comes in handy in the courtroom and in dealing with people in negotiations and in all types of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to say I have a background in science. I'm a PhD biologist by training, and I've always actually found that it makes people pay attention when you're an educated person, because here's an educated person who also believes in the psychic stuff, so it actually lends some credibility.
Well, because psychic phenomenon, and now that we're in the 21st century, it's based on quantum physics, because everything is based on quantum physics. We know that from science, and as a biologist, you certainly understand this, that everything's made of molecules, which are composed of atoms, which are made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons, which are made up of a smaller particle, electromagnetic energy known as quanta, ergo quantum physics, particle physics. So if everything is made up of this electromagnetic energy, and we're talking everything as in from an ant to the air that we breathe, to you and me, to the radio waves that this show is being broadcast on, to the light of rays, the rays of light of the sun itself. I mean, everything that exists is made up of the same energy. And as Albert Einstein so eloquently said nearly a century ago, that there is no matter. There's simply energy which vibrates at different frequencies. Right. And he said that's not philosophy, that's physics. So as a psychic medium, what I do is when somebody dies or when we die, the energy that's in our brain, you can call it, in matters of faith, we call it a soul or a spirit. In the realm of psychology, it is referred to as consciousness. And in the realm of physics, it's referred to as the quantum electromagnetic field. This transfers to another frequency. And what I do as a medium is I align my brainwave frequency to a higher vibration. Spirits are able to spot that. They bring their frequency to a lower vibration. We get a frequency match. So everything is based on physics. And that's why science and spirituality are not in separate camps. We're now beginning to see that what people of faith have been talking about for millennia is now coinciding with recent discoveries made in the realm of particle physics.
Oh, absolutely. And I know myself as an intuitive reader, that's exactly what I'm doing when I read people, is I'm moving my vibration up and down to meet them at the frequency that they're at. So,
exactly. And don't you get sort of a tingly kind of an electrical charge when you tune in and you make that great connection? And we actually feel it physiologically, which is working in tandem with our spirituality.
That's right. Well, and I see it clairvoyantly as well. So I basically, with my clairvoyance, I'm able to see the vibrational frequency that somebody's operating at their crown chakra, and then I meet them at that frequency.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's wonderful. Well, and everybody is able to do this to varying degrees. I'm a firm believer that mediums are born, they're not made. But I'm also a firm believer that everyone is capable of having a mediumistic experience. It just means that not everyone is a medium. For example, we can all swim, we can't all be Michael Phelps.
Yeah.
We can all play guitar, but we can't be, Eric Clapton, who now just announced he's going deaf. Isn't that depressing? Then anyway.
Oh, no. Well, and nor do we want to. We each have our own unique purpose and affinity for what we want to do in our time while we're here. But as you say, we are all electromagnetic energy, and we're not our physical bodies, we're not our brains, we're spirit. And as spirit, the way that we communicate is through vibration and frequency and light.
Exactly. And, it comes down to everything's frequency. We are surrounded now by all this technology, and, people tell me, well, I don't believe that. And I said, well, what if I told you that you were surrounded right now by invisible beams of energy loaded with information? I'd say it's like totally BS, man. And I said, well, really? Turn on a radio. You're surrounded by radio waves. What do you think those were? And back in the year 1850, radio waves were simply a theory. And within 50 years, that theory became reality. So science fiction became science fact. And so now that we're talking about the consciousness in terms of quantum physics, we're just years, if that, away from conclusive proof. I don't need the proof. You don't need the proof because we're practitioners and we communicate with discarnate intelligence. But for mainstream society, we are closing in on absolute proof that consciousness, who and what we are, survives physical death.
Absolutely. And I'm just such a firm believer in helping people to have those personal experiences because, like you say, you and I, we might have an aptitude and a strength in that area, but everyone can be taught to experience themselves as spirit.
To enhance their awareness and their sensitivity to it and to recognize the signs from it.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, that's okay, because I wanted to go on to talk a little bit about, now you and I know one of the keys to mastering clairvoyance, to mastering your intuitive ability, is the conscious use of the pineal gland. So let's explore that a little bit. What do you know about the pineal gland and how it confers the ability to perceive energy vibrations and to see spirit?
The pineal gland is the mysterious psychic gland within our head. And for the listeners who do yoga, think of your third eye chakra. That's in the middle of your forehead. It's also referred to as the indigo colored chakra. Well, the Hindus 5,000 years ago were pretty bright when they figured out the chakras, because each of the chakras correspond with one of the endocrine glands, and the pineal gland is an endocrine gland which is in your head, and it's right behind the center of your forehead, maybe about 4 or 5 inches or so. And recent discoveries in Britain and the British, the Israelis, the French, and the Germans have found that there are calcite and magnetite crystals in the pineal gland, and it generates an electromagnetic field. It also regulates brainwave frequency. It controls our perception of light and our production of the hormone melatonin. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of this lima bean-sized gland. This is a pretty sophisticated piece of of equipment here. And so basically, we have a radio transmitter, an antenna, and a receiver all in our head. And so it is believed that the epicenter of psychic activity is the pineal gland, because that's what allows us to raise our brainwave frequency to a higher level so that spirits can lower theirs, and then you get the frequency match. And I discussed this in my book, Evidence of Eternity, and we're seeing more and more interest and study in the scientific and in the medical community, of course, and certainly in the realm of biology, which is, biology and medicine are so interlocked, that scientists are finding, the more they find out about the pineal gland, the more questions arise. I think it's kind of cool.
It's very cool. And listeners, if you want to have an experience of activating your pineal gland, actually all you need to do is focus your conscious awareness in the center of your head. I actually think we have a podcast where we teach a technique
Couple or 3 or 4.
Yeah, where we teach a technique called centering, which is meant to help you to stimulate and activate your clairvoyance by bringing you, the pure consciousness, you, the being of light, to sit there in the center of your head. It's one of the seats of the soul, that you're meant to sit there in your physical body. And, this has been known by spiritual masters for thousands of years, and it's fantastic that our, modern science is catching up with it. And if you even look at sort of ancient art and ancient buildings, you can see a motif that looks like a pine cone, because the pineal gland looks like a pine cone, and it's worked into many ancient temples as a motif.
It is. And I believe that the Hindus were the first, because of the chakras. There's 7 chakras in the body. There are 7 endocrine glands in the body, and the locations of the chakras coincide with the location of the endocrine glands. And the endocrine glands are all electrochemical devices because they each secrete different hormones. And the crown chakra, I love when you're talking about the little tongue of light that's above our head. That coincides with the location of the pituitary gland, another very fascinating gland in our brain. And then you have other spiritual people throughout the centuries talking about the inner eye, the third eye. In fact, in Christianity, St. Teresa of Avila, she was the first woman to be given the title and the honor of being called a doctor of the church. And St. Teresa talked about the 7 mansions within. Now, isn't that interesting?
Yes.
That she's talking about the 7 mansions, or 7 chakras, because being a very highly evolved psychic medium, St. Teresa, and she was smart because she joined the clergy and she was a super intellectual, so, the men couldn't quite brush her off because she probably did rings around all of them. And she identified these energy centers within all of us. And now, through modern medicine, we're seeing that the endocrine glands do quite a bit more than just secrete hormones. They have a lot to do with the energy flow throughout our body. So it's not some airy-fairy, whimsical, theoretical thing. This, once again, is based in science and in fact.
Absolutely. I mean, the chakra system is kind of like that body-spirit interface. Now, talking about all of this, I noticed from your bio that you have a lot to do with the Edgar Cayce Association of Research and Enlightenment. And he was one of the ones, I guess he's not even within our modern era anymore because he's about 100 years ago, isn't he? But I know that he brought forward some amazing information about the chakra system and the interplay between the chakra system and the endocrine system. And I think that some of what he said hasn't been discovered by science yet.
Edgar Cayce, in many ways, stands apart from other mediums because he was in Britain they would refer to him as a trance medium. Here in the U.S. we'd refer to him as a channeler. So he didn't tune into the energy of a person and say, okay, your mother's coming through and she looked like this and that. What happened with him is he would go into a trance-like state, which is why he was called the sleeping prophet. Yes, and spirits would communicate through him. And he came up with a lot of medical advice and cures. He also talked about God being electromagnetic energy. It was quite fascinating. The more you read about Edgar Cayce, the more you get immersed in him. And I've been honored to speak at the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach because Edgar Cayce, he was drawn to Virginia Beach because of the sand content in Virginia Beach.
The crystalline quality.
Exactly. And yes, and that's why there's a healing center there, and it's a wonderful organization with branches throughout the entire country. And they have conferences, and I've been a speaker at a number of the conferences there. A sad footnote to Virginia Beach, due to the dredging offshore and what quote unquote modern progress has done to the beach and the dredging. The sand composition of the beach is no longer what it was in Edgar Casey's day, so they've kind of contaminated it.
It's a shame, isn't it?
It's very much a shame. But Edgar Casey, yes, he's technically not in the modern era, but what he did do, you may want to even call him the first modern medium, because he was the one that was bringing forth messages based on electromagnetic energy, where he talked quite a bit about it. And Casey was very big on alkalizing the body, which now we know is one of the best ways of combating cancer. And also he talked about frequency and vibration on a cellular level, which now this may be one of the big medical breakthroughs here in the 21st century, is energy healing on a cellular level by raising the vibration of cells. Because if you look at something like a cancer cell, it's not vibrating at the same, level, the same frequency, the same amplitude as a healthy cell.
That's right. So I am going to have to go to a break, unfortunately, but so we're going to have some advertisements, listeners, and you're listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and with Corey and our fabulous guest, Mark Anthony, who is the author of Evidence of Eternity and Never Letting Go, and he's the psychic lawyer. And if you're listening in and you have a question for us, you can write to info@drlesleyphillips.com or call 604-504-7441, extension 4142, and we'll be back in a moment. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and Corey, and this evening with psychic lawyer Mark Anthony. Welcome back, Mark. Before the break, we were talking about vibration, and we were talking about vibration in the context of the cells of the body and how healthy cells are vibrate at a higher vibratory vibration than unhealthy cells like cancer cells. Now, I believe that there's been a lot of recent work around how cells communicate with each other through vibration. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. The Russians back in the 1920s were the first to come up with the idea of biophotons. And what more recent discoveries have shown is that biophotons are a reality. That means our cells communicate with each other through flashes of light. And it is believed that one cell can emit 100,000 flashes of light inside of a minute. Mm-hmm. And that we're a matrix of light. And that's how our cells communicate. It's almost like a binary code. So the example I like to use is, let's say you drop a hammer on your foot and you immediately feel the pain. Well, we certainly know that it isn't chemical for that message to get from your foot to your head, because it would take quite a long time. And we do know that the nervous system operates on electricity, which does move at the speed of light. Mm-hmm. But scientists now are seeing that biophotons, they emit these ultra weak flashes of light, which are not visible to the naked eye. So what we're seeing now is when we talk about the perception of God in terms of light, we're now finding that very light is within our own body. So there's an outer light, and there's an inner light. And so this is a very exciting discovery that we are actually light beings, as once again something Albert Einstein said. And this is also something Edgar Casey brought forward. This is something that Jesus talked about, that Buddha talked about, that Krishna talked about, having the inner light. So what we're seeing is that what people of faith have been discussing and what has been perceived as, I guess they were talking about it in metaphorical and abstract terms, I think not. They actually realize that the light of God is also the light within. And this is very, very fascinating, because it's not just human beings that have biophotons. It's other animals, even plants. Their cells communicate through a matrix of light, which we now know as biophotons.
Mm. Yes, it's fantastic. Now, you coined a term, I believe you coined a term, enlightenment.
Yes.
So tell us what that means and how it relates to biophotons, and what's different to enlightenment and enlightenment.
Enlightenment is when somebody comes to an understanding and a knowledge of something. It's like all of a sudden you figure something out, or you have a spiritual moment where you feel an interconnectedness with God. And enlightenment in the spiritual sense is seeing the light. And I know that as a clairvoyant, you have seen the light. When you connect with spirits and they talk about being in the light, so many times I see this bright white light, and it may have like beams of some gold or silver and possibly some bright like copper beams in it. And this is connecting with that higher frequency. Every great spiritual teacher from the Hindu sages 5,000 years ago up till now refers to the light, going into the light, connecting with the light, near-death experience. People who've had near-death experiences, myself included, talk about perception of God in terms of light. So what enlightenment is not only, enlightenment is an external thing that we begin to understand, but enlightenment is embracing the light of God within. And this is not just a philosophical and a spiritual realization. We now know that this occurs on a cellular level. So enlightenment is embracing and holding the light of God, which is within.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Wonderful. And I'll just give another tip to listeners. I'm sure you probably do this as well. I teach a technique called grounding, and the purpose of the grounding technique is to help you to bring your light into your physical body and to help you increase your vibration. So listeners, if you want to get enlightened, look up the podcast on grounding and it will help you.
It's very important to be grounded,
yes, yeah.
Not just in psychic work, but in general. And one of the things I like to do, and this may differ from or may be the same, but I like to, if I do like a quickie meditation, because it's always nice to do the real long ones, but sometimes we don't have the time in our schedule. And I start with each chakra, and I focus on the red chakra, which is at the base of the spine. And I kind of think this red light going through my body and like roots coming out of my feet, energy roots that sink into the earth and connect me with the energy of the earth. And then I go up from there and envision each different chakra color as like a glass ball of light, and it could be dirty, and you envision the white light purifying it, so restoring the root chakra to the bright red, the orange chakra to a bright orange, the solar plexus to a bright yellow, so on and so forth. And that really helps. It also will calm you down if you're going through a lot of stress and frenetic energy caused by family and life and relationships and all of that. So being grounded is extremely important. And so I'm glad that you have that resource available for the listeners.
Yeah. And because, as we were saying, listeners, you are light, you are high vibration energy. Your physical body is low vibration energy. So the grounding is what brings those two things together, actually.
One of the wonderful things about finally getting to say something.
I'm having a fabulous conversation here.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Don't interrupt me too much because I'll forget what I was going to say. One of the amazing things I find in relation to this discussion about the fact that we are light and we are energy is that because of that fact, we can heal. We can heal and we can help others heal through working with that energy, hence the term energy healing, correct? And I do something based on quantum physics as well. And it's very effective when you work at that level. And do you have experience with the energy healing aspects of this wonderful existence we're in? Hello.
Have we lost you?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. All of a sudden, your voice goes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know. I was listening, and you had me on the edge of my seat. Like, what's coming next?
What's coming next?
All right, good, go.
No, I work with matrix energetics, which is based on quantum physics.
Yes.
And basically, all that is changing your energy around a given issue. So, do you deal or do you work with people on a healing basis as well, or is it strictly in the working with spirits from beyond?
Well, I think the two are interchangeable because what I have found, Corey, in my work is that healing and messages, I get a lot of medical data. I've been referred to as a medical intuitive. I get a lot of medical data and a lot of healing messages from spirits. And it's because spirits, being pure energy, they can, when I'm doing a reading for somebody, a spirit of a loved one can overlay their energy on the person and they'll find where the energy isn't flowing. Okay, there could be blocks, for diseases or whatever that's interrupting the electrical flow. And then they'll transmit to me things that the person should look out for, go to the doctor for. I was in Houston and I was in front of a whole crowd of people. And this husband and wife, and they were a younger couple. They were probably early 30s. And the wife's brother came through and all of a sudden started focusing on her husband. And I said, there is something going on in your lower abdomen, your colon, and you need to get a blood test. Okay, you need to check this out because there's some major problem. And he's rolling his eyes, and they're, no, we're fine, no, rejecting everything I'm saying. I says, okay, well, this is very strong, so I'll let it go. So 2 months later, I get an email from the wife, and she said, I really wish we would have listened to you because about a week after that event, my husband's appendix burst, and it was so bad, and the peritonitis that spread throughout his colon, they had to remove his colon, now he's on a colostomy. And the spirits were telling me, get him to a doctor, because if they would have done a simple blood test, they would have seen a huge elevated white blood cell count indicating an infection. And then they could have probed more, and they would have found that, oh my gosh, his appendix, that whole area, is so covered in infection that they could have been giving him antibiotics to bring it down. And then when the appendix did go bad or did rupture, then it would not have been as destructive to his body. So this is not unusual in readings for spirits to identify physical problems. That being said, a lot of people start coming to me and, do I have diseases? Do I have this? Do I have that? It's like, okay, I'll tell you what a spirit tells me, but that's no substitute for you making sure you go to your doctor on a regular basis for checkups and, do your maintenance. Hey, we take our car in every 5,000 miles for an oil change. How come we're not taking our body in every 5,000 miles?
So let me ask you a question, slightly at a tangent, but maybe not. And it's to do with the nature of the personality. The nature of the personality while it's in the temporal self in physical reality. And then after that personality passes, what do you know, what do you believe, what do you see and observe about Well, let's say we've got Auntie Madge while she's alive, and her hobbies are baking and knitting. And then Auntie Madge, after she's passed on, surely she doesn't suddenly become a medical expert, or does she?
What I found is when the body dies, and the brain is an organ, the brain does not create consciousness,
right.
It merely houses it. So if the person had physical and emotional disturbances or problems, that's what dies
right.
with the body. And a spirit, being a pure electromagnetic energy, now reverts back to being an immortal living spirit. And so when they communicate, they will bring personality traits with them so we can identify them.
Right.
Are they angry? No. Are they mentally ill? No. Are they sick? No. Are they alone? No. Because people are like, are they alone? It's like, well, during the reading, 10 people came through and I saw them, so clearly not, and you don't want to be facetious, but what people need to understand is nobody's alone on the other side. And that being said, Auntie Madge is now interconnected with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she is now part of the collective consciousness that is the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So when she does an energetic scan of you during a reading, she is able to draw upon this infinite database and say, hey, look, there's a problem with your kidneys. Okay, so if something like that comes up, by all means, go get it checked. Hey, maybe I'm interpreting it wrong, and if I am, well, then you went to the doctor. And if the information is accurate, which it normally is, then this could be a life-saving event. And that's what I call spirit intervention. When a spirit or collective of spirits comes in to notify somebody of a medical problem or tell someone, stay away from this, avoid that. I did a reading for this couple, and they brought their son, nice young man. I think was in first year of college. And during the reading, the spirit of his brother, I focused on their son, and the spirit said, no hand gliding ever. And so I say that, and I mean, it looked like I threw buckets of ice water in all their faces. And the son goes, oh wow, I'm supposed to go hand gliding next week. And the mother looks at him and goes, like hell you are. So if something like that comes out, listen. And because what people need to realize that with spirit communication, interdimensional communication, because we're communicating with a different realm. The reading's not about me, okay? It is about the person receiving the reading, and I'm merely the conduit that the information comes through to the client for the client's benefit. Okay, so you're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't follow the advice coming through, but you really may be hurting yourself in a very big way. So when you have a reading with a legitimate psychic medium, listen to what comes through. Pay attention to it. And if it doesn't all make sense right away, don't worry about it, because it can take hours, days, weeks, even longer for you to figure it out, or for the full impact of the messages received to unfold and be revealed.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful answer. I'm going to one last break, and listeners, you're listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and with Corey, and we're talking to the psychic lawyer, Mark Anthony, about mediumship and quantum consciousness, and after the break, humans as interdimensional beings. Welcome back, listeners, to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley, broadcasting live on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley and live streaming on civl.ca. And you can also listen to the podcasts on drlesleyphillips.com. Well, this evening we've been having a fabulous conversation with Mark Anthony, who's known as the psychic lawyer, and we've been dancing around a few different areas of metaphysics, but we started to touch upon, just before the break, the multidimensional nature of consciousness through our example of Auntie Madge, who passed on and merged with a greater than who she was when she was alive. So I believe that we're multidimensional beings, Anthony. What's the latest scoop from the scientific community on that? Does science and quantum physics support that?
Absolutely. And this comes down to the Schwarzschild quantum lattice theory. And I know that sounds cool, but Schwarzschild quantum lattice theory. What this indicates is that electrons, which are part of the molecules that compose everything, jump from this dimension to another dimension. And in clinical conditions, electrons have disappeared and then reappear in a different location without traversing the matter in between. And it appears that they're going to a different frequency, another dimension, what is known as a quantum leap. And we're composed of molecules which are composed of electrons, protons, and neutrons. So what this indicates is that while we're in corporeal form, part of us is never really here. So those days that you kind of feel off, you don't feel like I'm all here and I need more coffee than I've consumed, hey, relax, because what's happening is you're just aware that part of you is going to another dimension and back. Now, when we physically die and the electromagnetic field in our head leaves the brain, think of your brain like a computer hard drive, and who you are and all your memories and your very being is the data in the hard drive. It doesn't crash with the hard drive. It simply gets transferred to another dimension. And see, the reason the Schwarzschild quantum lattice theory is so important is that they're tracking electrons that are still connected to lower vibrational energy, in other words, matter, or what we perceive to be matter. And when you revert to a purely energetic form, you don't have that tether. So this ties into the theory that our consciousness, which is an electromagnetic field, is also vibrating between this universe and another dimension. Ergo, we are multidimensional beings. Taking that a step further, we know from quantum physics that on its basic subatomic level, everything is quanta, is electromagnetic energy. So therefore, we're just shifting vibrations, and we are spiritually, energetically connected with everything, which would account for premonitions, intuitive feelings, detecting the presence of spirits, sensations of deja vu. There's all a logical explanation for it, and my belief is it's because of this phenomenon.
And also Einstein, who was quote, who said that time is not actually linear, would prove as well that you can have past and future life experiences and be aware of them.
Yes. And he was also explained that space is not a flat plane, but it bends and curves. And anyway, we'll get into we won't get into the space travel and all that, but and what's so cool about quantum physics is it kind of like it's not kind of, it's in everything. It's in everything. But that's absolutely true. And the Hindus, in their belief in reincarnation, which I am a firm believer in reincarnation, they also believe that time is timeless once you're on the other side. So therefore, your next lifetime could be in what you and I, Corey, believe to be the past. In other words, we think time's linear, but maybe our next lifetime will be, in British India in the year 1785 or something like that.
That's right.
And I remember reading and studying that, and it was like at first I thought, and then the more I started looking at quantum physics, and I believe it was Heisenberg said that after he read the Bhagavad Gita, he said that this is looking more like physics. So a lot of the physicists are seeing that the way the Hindus look at reincarnation and time seems to be more closely aligned with their discoveries and theories in particle physics.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's I read Dr. Weiss, who did past life and future life readings, and he was questioned a lot on his future life readings, and he said, well, again, if you look at time, if time is not linear, and as you say, that once we're on the other side, there is no actual time. You can go from one side to the other side. It makes a lot of sense. It's absolutely, and as you said before, deja vu, all these things that come about, they all have pertinence. There's a pertinence to it. It's I even go as far as believing that we can, because of our nature as energy, once we pass on and come back, that we can actually split that energy into different areas and partially be in two different lives at the same time. Ooh, he's thinking now. He's thinking now.
Well,
I'm not sure if what your belief system is around that, but I don't believe that we stay completely. Again, if we're all energy and going to an energetic place where everybody else is energy, there must be a mingling and a separation at some point as well.
So let me share an analogy, maybe.
Okay, Lesley.
My favourite analogy to talk about lifetimes is to think of a 1970s disco ball.
Ooh.
On the ceiling of a roller disco or something. And if you think of that as the soul or higher consciousness, and then all of those little beams of light those little points of light that you see dancing on the floor as lifetimes, right? So if you're in that little beam of light on the floor, you might see a light ahead of you, you might see a light behind you, you might see a light next to you, right? From your perspective, there's a linear form going on, but from the perspective of the soul, all of those existences they are being projected. There's no time. They're all being projected by the soul outside of time, just like a disco ball.
Wow.
Anyway,
if I ever walk into a nightclub and see a disco ball, I will never look at it the same again.
It's very, very interesting.
So we've got approximately 5 minutes left on the show, Anthony. So
his name is Mark.
Anthony
is his last
I am
name.
so sorry. I've done that several times, haven't I? I apologize,
okay.
Mark.
Oh, I'm good with that. I know what you meant, and
well, when I was
you have a British accent, so you get a pass on that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it's like it's amazing. I have some friends from England. They said they go, we love coming to the States because whenever we want reservations, I think we just call up and really turn it on.
That's right. Then they just say, "I love your accent."
Yeah, it's like, well, I love your accent. I mean, yeah, how many people? I love your accent. Say that again. You know.
Exactly. Well, what I wanted to say is,
I'm sorry.
So, what would you like to tell us about? Without us asking you a question, what haven't we asked you that we should have and would have been really juicy for us to get into?
Well, actually, though, I've got a lot of great things coming up this year. I'm kicking off my nationwide 2018 tour this weekend. I'll be at the United Metaphysical Church of the Palm Beaches in Palm Beach, Lake Worth, Florida, which is next to Palm Beach. Then I'll be headed to the Unity of Naples Church and then to Aquarian Dreams in the Melbourne, Florida area. And later on in the year, there will be the Spirit Symposium in Carlsbad, California. And I'm putting on a presentation along with psychic medium Suzanne Wilson. And we'll be talking quite a bit about quantum physics and using spirit communication as a means of healing grief. And then we will do a panel discussion as part of the presentation and as part of the program, and then a joint mediumship demonstration. And that's all going to be on my website. And also I'll be speaking again at the IANS, International Association Near-Death Studies Conference in September in Seattle, and the Association for Afterlife Research Educational Institute. All the organizations I speak of have these really long titles. But anyway, you can find out about my nationwide tour on my website, which is evidenceofeternity.com. It's the same as my latest book, Evidence of Eternity. And I would like to ask all the listeners, please go ahead and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and certainly sign up for my newsletter so you can keep up to date, because I'm going to be on TV, radio, public events all throughout the country. My team is booking me all over the place, and I absolutely love going on tour. I love meeting people from all over the place. And yes, I was mimicking a Southern accent before. I am not in any way degrading people from the South. I went to law school at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. And one thing I learned real quick is just because somebody may talk like this does not mean they are stupid.
No.
And I knew some real country lawyers, and they said, well, the one thing I like about them city lawyers that think I'm a dumb country bumpkin, they go, they don't realize they're wrong until it's too late. So just because somebody has an accent different from yours, you can't ever think that they're not a sharp pack in the box as anyone else.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I'd love to invite you back sometime when we've got, an opening, because I'm sure that there would have been so much more we could have talked about. And thank you for the work that you're doing out there in the world, helping people in so many ways through the mediumship that you do, and through the books that you write. And we didn't get into talking about helping victims of crime and all of that, but it's great work. So thanks for being in the world and doing this, and we'd love to have you back on the show sometime.
I look forward to it. That'll be great.
Thank you so much. So we're going to say goodbye, listeners. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of the show this week. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Lesley and with Corey.
Yes, goodbye, and we'll talk to you next week again.
Next Tuesday, same time, 7 Pacific.
Next week we'll have visual aids.
Yes, so don't miss out next week.
Miss out on the show.
All right. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Lesley Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. Come back again.